Welcome to Food for Thought. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau from Compassionate Cooks. I founded Compassionate Cooks to empower people to make informed food choices and to debunk myths about vegetarianism and animal rights. You can learn more about who we are and what we do by visiting our website, compassionatecooks.com. I would first like to thank our listener sponsor today is Mariana Rosenzweig. If I'm saying that correctly, Mariana. I've had the pleasure of meeting Mariana a couple of times. She's come to California a couple of times, and she's an absolute gem. She lives in Brazil, but she visits the U.S. pretty frequently to visit family and friends. And she was out in California a couple years ago. We met for brunch, and my husband and I saw her last year when they returned again to California. And Mariana's a longtime podcast listener. She's a longtime supporter, and she's an amazing mom, which is why I chose her as the listener sponsor for this particular episode. Her most recent email to me reads as follows. I just renewed my membership to the Compassionate Cooks Club in honor of my son. He deserves to be recognized for his amazing effort at the age of 6 to be the only vegan kid in his American school here in Brazil. You met him briefly in Oakland last summer. His name is Matthias, but we call him Matt. He's an activist already and says he wants to grow up fast to spend his life traveling around the world telling people to become vegetarian. Yesterday, he told me a kid in his class had received an award for being the most respectful kid in first grade. And he asked me, how can he get this award if he's not even vegetarian, Mom? And then he said, I guess they mean being respectful with people, but respect means a lot more than that. And he finished with these words, I can't wait to grow up to be like Colleen and like her make hundreds of people vegetarian. I thought this was worth sharing with you. I had tears in my eyes from his sensitivity. It was you, Colleen, who helped me as a mom gain the awareness I needed not to allow my son to become desensitized. He's only 6, and you are his biggest inspiration. Well, Matt is most certainly an inspiration to me, and little does he know that he's an inspiration to people all around him. We just don't know who we're affecting when we're speaking up for the animals, and we must absolutely never underestimate the power of compassion, vocal, visible compassion. So thank you, Matt, for being a voice for the voiceless. The animals, thank you. And adults out there, never underestimate the power of compassion in your children. Matt's a perfect example of someone who's been taught to honor the huge heart that he already has and to manifest that in his life. There's nothing more beautiful than someone who's manifesting their innate compassion. And this is the most consistent message we can give our children, to not be afraid of that compassion, to be proud of it, to embrace it completely, to not cover it up with excuses and justifications and lies. I believe that we come into this world fully compassionate, and the best gift we can give to children is to honor the empathy they have for animals by letting their natural compassion guide us as parents, as adults. We try and keep images of animal cruelty and suffering from children for a reason. So why would we go behind their backs and support the very thing they would find anathema, the very thing we find anathema? We pay other people to do to animals what children would never do, and what children especially would be traumatized by, quite literally traumatized if they saw the kinds of things that we do to animals just for pleasure, just for our palates. So let's talk today about raising our children in such a way that's consistent with our own values, consistent with their own values, consistent with the messages we're already giving to them, which is to be kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic people. Let's talk today about raising vegan children. I've heard from a lot of people who've been asking me to do this episode. We definitely live in a non-vegan world, so a lot of things come up for vegan parents. Some people have an easy time. For some, it's more of a challenge. And I do think some of the difference has to do with at what stage in the child's life you or your family becomes vegan. I think there's a difference between already being vegan when you decide to have kids and having kids and then going vegan. And I say that because because I think when you're already vegan, you've already settled into it, you're comfortable in your own vegan skin, you may have already started to work out in your head or with your partner that you will raise your children vegan, and how you will raise your children vegan. If you've been vegan for a while, you may get less criticism from parents, though this is definitely not a guarantee, or you're at least better able to weather the opinions and the pressure you do get from people around you. Also, from a practical standpoint, it's a lot easier to raise a child vegan from the very start. No doubt it's more difficult to change habits in your children, habits that you put there in the first place, but that doesn't mean it can't be undone. So I think communication and consistency are key. I also think it's a lot easier to raise your kids vegan if your partner's also vegan, or at least very supportive of your being vegan and your desire to raise your children vegan. That probably merits an entirely different episode. So I think today we should just focus on being a vegan parent, trying to raise a vegan child or children. But of course, it helps if the child is getting consistent messages and consistent food from both their parents. And this can certainly be difficult if the parents are separated or divorced or not on good terms. I may have said this before, but I'm always amazed when people criticize parents, for raising their kids vegan, saying that parents shouldn't impose their veganism on their children. Parents impose their values on their children all the time. It's called parenting. So if this is a choice you've made or a choice you're contemplating, please take heart in the fact that it's not an anomaly to raise your children in a way that reflects your deepest values. We do it all the time. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I do not have human children. I have only furry children, and they're not vegan. Plus, they don't go to school, so I don't have to deal with all those things that moms and dads of human children have to deal with. But I do have many good friends who raise their kids vegan. That sounds really funny. Some of my best friends are vegan. That's true. They are. But one friend in particular, he's one of the best moms I know, and she and her husband have 3 kids, and their names are Nate and Tammy. Well, the parents' names are Nate and Tammy, and I met them several years ago at a PETA event, and they've become good friends over time. And they were vegetarian when Tammy was pregnant with Kaylee, their first child, who's now 7. I can't believe that. My God, that's a long time ago. And then they went vegan when Kaylee was 9 months old. So they were already vegetarian when Tammy was pregnant. And then when Kaylee was 9 months old, they went vegan. And they also have a unique experience that I know has been helpful to other vegans. I've certainly passed on advice from Tammy at the request of other people in the situation. After they had Kaylee, they adopted Braden, who's now 4. He was an infant when they adopted him. He's now 4. And then a few years later, just recently, they adopted Christian, who's now 10 months young. And he was also an infant when they adopted him. And it's been really interesting to hear about how their being vegan factored into the adoption process. For them, it was very positive, but for others, I know it was a problem. And one aspect of Tammy's experience that's worth mentioning, and that's been really helpful for other moms, is what she fed Braden and Christian when they were infants, because she wasn't lactating because she hadn't been pregnant. So, of course, they had to look into the best formula for their children. And this situation certainly isn't unique to adoptive parents, even though human breast milk is the best food for infants. There are many reasons they need to be fed formula instead. So Tammy fed both boys Baby's Only organic soy formula, which incidentally is available in the Compassionate Cooks Amazon store. And while Tammy wasn't a fan of formula in general, she found that this was the best choice available. At one point, she and Nate had also bought some human milk from a mother's milk bank for Christian recently, but she said it was prohibitively expensive, but that is an option for people. When Braden turned 1, they took him off the formula immediately, and they started him on a whole foods diet, and they'll do the same for Christian as well. So I thought that was worth sharing because it's a pretty unique experience. Speaking of vegan products and choosing the best for your children, I highly encourage you to check out Kid Bean. I don't know if you've heard of Kid Bean before, but you've heard of it now, and I highly recommend that you check it out. It's Kid Bean, and that's perfect because I always say beans, because to me, like every little tiny little thing, whether they're humans or animals, they're like beans because they're just cute beans. So kidbean.com, kidbean.com, and it's quite literally a vegan family superstore. I've known about Kid Bean for years, and I've been recommending it to folks for as long as they've been around, which is 9 years now. And not only is everything they sell vegan and they're vegan owned, their compassion is reflected in all of their business practices. To reduce their carbon footprint, 83% of all the products sold in their store are made in the USA. None are made in China, and some are made in Canada. All of Kid Bean's products are made with fair labor practices. All of them are vegan, so free of animal products altogether, and none of their products were tested on animals. All of their products are free of toxic dyes and PVCs and BPAs and petroleum and chlorine and artificial colors and synthetic fragrances, synthetic preservatives, parabens, formaldehyde, and other harmful chemicals. Everything's free of genetically modified organisms, heavy metals such as lead and mercury and chromium and cadmium, and the wood products are from sustainable wood. So they're just amazing, and they have everything. So some of the things we may talk about over time, you can find in kidbean.com a few of the categories. I'll name the categories here. You've got bath and body care, which includes colic and gas soothers, teething relief, bathing, skin and hair care, and more. There's bedding, which has mattress pads and mattresses and pillows and sheets and blankets and quilts. There's clothing, not only for preemies and newborns and kids, but also for breastfeeding moms. There's diapers and training pants. There's footwear. There's furniture. There's maternity and nursing items. There's gear like carriers and slings and backpacks and changing pads and wet bags and diaper bags and shopping cart covers. There's toys. There's a huge selection of toys. They have everything from arts and crafts and dolls and doll houses to games and musical instruments and trains and stuffed toys. So check out kidbean.com. You can browse their clothing by size, which is really convenient. You can shop by season. You can shop for toys according to age. They also have gift certificates, and for new parents, which is really awesome, they have a gift registry. So definitely check it out. It's a beautiful, well-organized, easy-to-use website, and I really encourage you to bookmark it. You can join their mailing list. You can subscribe to their blog, and it's just a great website, whether you are having kids or whether you need to get a gift for someone having kids or who has kids. And Compassionate Cooks members receive 10% off of everything in their store for a limited time. So become a Compassionate Cooks member to reap these benefits. And once you're a member, you'll get the discount code in your welcome letter or in your special members only newsletter. So check out kidbean.com for great compassionate gifts. And it's just worth giving you that resource because I know people ask all the time where to find these kinds of things, where to find organic, non-toxic, vegan products for their kids. And I love especially that everything's vegan and that it's a vegan-owned company. So back to our resident expert, Tammy. Even though I know enough to talk about general suggestions for raising vegan children, Tammy is my go-to person when it comes to this issue. I'm technically capable of offering my own opinion about how to handle these challenges, but I think you'd benefit more from the direct experience of a parent who deals with this on a daily basis. So what I did was, based on emails that I had gotten from people over time, I asked Tammy some specific questions having to do with family gatherings and school events and birthday parties, and she made so many good suggestions and ideas. I think you're going to love them. I'm so grateful to Tammy for her help and her generosity and her overall awesomeness. So I'm just going to let you know what I asked Tammy. I'll read her answers and then I'll kind of intervene where I see fit. The first question I asked Tammy had to do with the fact that every extended family gathering, birthday party, and school event seems to be revolved around non-vegan food. One vegan parent wrote to me to say, as a result, I'm always scrambling to buy and prepare vegan treats so my kid doesn't feel left out. Even though I enjoy cooking and shopping for food, it can be exhausting. Sometimes I'm tempted to skip events altogether just because the food is too much of an issue. And I totally hear that. And here's what Tammy had to say. Dealing with non-vegan events can be tricky, especially with kids. Over the years, I found ways to make it easy on me if I feel like putting just a little effort into my own food preparation, or if I want to go all out to impress others with fabulous vegan fare. And I just want to interject. Obviously, I agree here, but this is not specific just to events for kids. All of us have to decide all the time when we want to just keep it simple or go all out. Most of us understand that food is activism, that every opportunity we have to demonstrate that vegan food is delicious and satisfying and familiar, we want to do it. So we put all this pressure on ourselves. And I understand that. I totally get that. So I don't think this is necessarily unique to parents. It's something each of us have to decide whenever there's any kind of event, how much effort we want to put into it. So Tammy continues, for example, if our whole immediate family is attending a family function, I always offer to bring food to share, either a main dish or an appetizer. This ensures that there'll be at least one thing for us to eat. Over the 6 years that we've been vegan, our family has come around quite incredibly and will most likely have a main dish for us to eat at family parties. This has not always been the case. So new vegans can take comfort in the hope that their family may eventually be more open to supporting their veganism and may even get creative and thoughtful in meal preparations for them. When I go to such family functions, I try to feel out the host without seeming rude in order to make sure that there really will be something for us to eat. If I'm doubtful, I'll bring some food along. And I know this is the case for a lot of you. I promise you that people's reactions when you first become vegan change after you've been vegan for a while, like Tammy indicated. You have to trust me on this. If you're a teenager and you think your parents will never support you, just give it time. If you're an adult and you think your coworkers will never stop teasing you, or your spouse or your partner won't stop complaining now that the food is different, or even your own parents as an adult, they don't let up on it. All I ask is that you trust me. People totally come around. Just as you've had time to come to terms with your veganism, I think we have to give other people time too. And food is a great way to do this. Food is a great way to encourage people to come around. Food brings people together. So sharing delicious dishes with people really gives them a new perspective. But I highly encourage you to bring more food than you think you need, because your dishes will be the first to be eaten. They'll be the most popular, I promise, and you'll be left with nothing to eat. And as I've said a million times about speaking your truth and not being apologetic, just making a simple phone call to the host and asking if it's okay for you to bring something along is easy and totally understandable, especially if you have kids. If your kids had an allergy, you'd have no problem calling and saying, hey, do you mind if I bring some food so I don't have to put you out? We could do the same thing as vegans. Hey, I just wanted to make sure it won't be a problem for me to bring some food for the kids. I don't want to put you out, so it's no problem for me to bring something for them. And of course, I'll make sure there's enough for everybody to eat too. Okay, so now this is going all out, right? This is making sure that you have food at an event, and this is what the person writing was concerned about, is that you're constantly having to cook, even when you're being invited to someone else's house. Okay, so we're going to get to the other part of the question too, but this is the going all out part. So Tammy continues, if a plain salad looks like it will be the main event for a party, I bring something else along, mainly so my kids won't be feeding on iceberg lettuce with Italian dressing. It's no fun to be out and have your kids complain of hunger and then have nothing suitable to feed them. If I don't feel like bringing a 3-course meal along, a grain and veggie-based burger or a sandwich can even do the trick. Sometimes I make it easy on myself so I don't feel like I have to cook just to attend a family function. If I'm cooking something to share, I try and make it appealing to other partygoers, even if they may not be eating it, just to show them how appetizing vegan food can be. So that's, obviously if it's, that's the going all out aspect. Tammy continues, when my kids are facing a non-vegan birthday party or a classroom event where food is involved, I like to be prepared, even over-prepared. But this is what I love about this. So this speaks to the concern about making sure your vegan kid has what they need at a birthday or, a school event. And though it takes some time up front, it pays off ultimately. So check out what Tammy does. At the beginning of the school year, I pack a bag of non-perishable treats for my daughter to keep in her classroom, and I'm sure to replenish the supply if needed. Kaylee's teacher is aware that Kaylee is vegan, and she provides her with one of her treats when another child brings in cupcakes or whatever other kinds of food to share with the class. It's easy for me to do. My daughter's quite happy to have a special treat for herself. I let her pick out the food when we go shopping in order to see what she prefers to have. Small bags of Barbara's bakery cookies or vegan candy bars or favorites of Kaylee's. We rarely have these things at home, so they're a special treat for her when she gets to eat them in school. She has yet to feel awkward or left out when these sorts of celebrations happen at school. And in fact, she winds up feeling more special because of it. I love that idea. This is what I mean. See, I would have never thought about that. I never would have come up with that. I love that idea. So, yes, it takes a little bit of thought in the beginning of the school year, however you create the time frame, each month or whatever. But then every time there's an event, your kid gets to have something special to celebrate, a classmate's birthday. Tammy goes on, if my kids attend a birthday party and I'll be there as well, sometimes I'll pack a treat similar to the ones Kaylee takes to school. I've also given them a healthier food bar as well, and they're usually happy with that. In the past, I've made cupcakes for a party just so the kids will have something to eat. I don't do that very much lately because it's a lot of work. And I love this too. I also want them to know that it's okay for them not to have what everyone else is having. It won't always be equal for them in terms of food. And I also want them to know that we don't always have to have something sugary in order to celebrate someone's birthday. So there's other options, and I know these days with so many events that parents have to attend, food is constantly an issue. So this is not just an issue for vegan parents. I'm certain of it. Everyone is feeling pressured to have food at events all the time when they revolve around kids. So I think we can just lighten up a little bit on that aspect of it. When Kaylee attends a birthday party for a friend and I'm not there, I send her a full lunch, something simple like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, some fruit, maybe a little treat to eat when the kids are having cake. I found that there's usually something there that she can eat as well, like fruit. And so far, Kaylee has been fine with this. When I posed this question to Tammy, I told her about the mom who wrote to me who said that she's sometimes overwhelmed by the process and she feels like skipping events. And Tammy said, I get it. I have felt like skipping events in the past too, but as time has gone by, it's gotten easier. I think the food becomes less of an issue for us, and the people close to us want to include us in the meals and try to prepare something vegan. I've felt more of an openness from family and friends as the years have gone by. It's definitely not an overnight process. It can take years to happen, but it's really heartwarming for me to look back at our journey and see just how much has changed in terms of our family and friends' attitude toward our choice and the support they have grown to show us. And I know that's definitely the case. So for those of you who feel like it's overwhelming in the beginning, please give it time. It won't always feel like a struggle, I promise you. The next question I asked Tammy had to do with addressing questions about why other family members or teachers or school friends that their child loves and respects, why they eat animals. I told her also that some parents have written to me who've really struggled because they become vegan. Let's say one person in the couple becomes vegan, and they tell their children they're doing so because they don't want to hurt animals, but the other parent continues to eat animals. And so the question is like, why does mommy or why does daddy want to continue to hurt animals? And it's a tough situation. And Tammy agrees. She says, I talk with my children about specific people that they ask about in their lives as well as the public in general. I tell them that most people simply don't think about what they're eating and don't really realize that they're hurting animals when they eat meat or dairy or eggs. I also talk about how I ate animals when I was a kid and a young adult, and that my favorite food was pork chops. Yuck. That was Tammy's interjection. She said, yuck. Yuck. When I was little, I explained to them the process that their dad and I went through to become vegan in order to show that we were once not vegan, like most people we know, and we made a choice to change. I think it's important to not criticize individuals and to point out that they simply do not know or they're not ready for a change in their lives. Kids need to have hope that things may change for those they love in terms of family members or friends deciding to go vegan, and to know that there's been a definite shift in recent years toward farm animal issues and the growing popularity of veganism. It really gives me a lot of hope. I'm also quick to point out which TV or movie personalities or musicians that my kids are familiar with are vegan. They think it's totally cool. I've also told my kids that it's okay to ask people they know why they're not vegan or why they eat meat, if they feel like doing so. And so far, they have not encountered any negative reactions when engaging people in these conversations. I love that. I love that. I love that. And I've said this before. We all have to remember that we once ate animals. We all have to remember our stories and our process. None of us are perfect, and that's not what being vegan is about. And that's definitely not something we want our kids to pick up on. We don't want to raise them to be judgmental and critical. We don't want to have a, we're good, they're bad attitude. So I think it's really important to talk to them about how there was a time that we didn't know that we were harming animals, but we were eating meat because it's what we were taught. Thanks, Tammy. I love that. I asked Tammy also to tell me what she does when her kids complain about why other kids are allowed to eat cheese, pizza, and ice cream. This was a question that I got from someone. I know that this is not something Tammy experiences, but she did have something to say about it. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that Tammy's children have their own convictions about being vegan, especially Kaylee. It became her own ethic, so it's not something Tammy had to continually convince her of. Now, for some kids, this may be more challenging. For some kids, it may come easily. Some parents may feel this is a constant battle, but it will change, and I hope Tammy's thoughts help. She said, once my kids know a food is not vegan, they're not really interested in eating it. I must say that I think the single most important part of raising vegan children is education. From day one, my kids have known where meat and dairy comes from, how it hurts the animals, that dairy is meant for baby cows and not humans, and that eggs are undeveloped baby chicks. I read them relevant children's books, show them the less graphic photographs of animals in magazines such as those from Farm Sanctuary and PETA, and I read them stories about how farm animals are abused in factory farms and in circuses and in laboratories, etc. They know what animals go through in order to become someone else's food or someone's jacket. While I'm not totally graphic and I don't say things that will give them nightmares, of course, I don't sugarcoat the facts. I really want them to imagine what it's like when a calf is taken from her mother and what it's like for a chicken to be stuffed into a tiny cage where her feet grow around the metal wires. If the kids don't feel a strong empathy and connection to the animals, I think there's hardly hope for them staying vegan. The kids have to want to be vegan. It has to be their choice. My children know that being vegan is the kind choice for the animals, for the planet, and their bodies. They're proud to be vegan, and they're proud to be part of something that's so helpful and wonderful. They enjoy helping the planet too, and they're totally aware of the health benefits of a vegan diet. We talk about the animals often. It comes up naturally from time to time, whether we're in the dairy section of a grocery store or in a restaurant or at a party. I want them to stay connected to the animals and know that they're making a kind choice. When they know that the cupcake or the slice of pizza that their cousin or friend is eating is made from animals who suffered, it's not appetizing to them at all. The next question I asked Tammy is, how do you react and not overreact if the kid eats something non-vegan? Tammy says, I've always been totally calm about this. Last week, Braden, now 4, told me that he ate some quote-unquote vegan pancakes at his preschool, in addition to the ones that I had sent with him so that he could celebrate the pancake pajama day at school. I told him, like I had done earlier in the school year, that the food they have at his school, with the exception of raw fruit or vegetables and things like raisins and nuts, are not vegan. I said it's okay if he accidentally eats something, but that he can choose to be vegan or not be vegan and eat the food that his teachers may offer him. He thought about it, and he said that he wanted to stay vegan. Braden's experiences at school are very different from Kaylee's when she was his age. She wouldn't eat anything I didn't give her unless she was totally sure it was vegan, and she was almost always right. She had no problem asking if something was vegan and just saying no thank you if it wasn't. Braden, on the other hand, seems to trust that the food being offered to him is vegan, and so has tried it on several occasions at his preschool. He definitely cares about the animals. He wants to be a skateboarding animal rescuer when he grows up. Nevertheless, he has more accidents when it comes to eating non-vegan food. I don't overreact. Everyone makes mistakes, and kids don't need to feel guilty if they've done something wrong. I make it seem like it's their choice to eat what they want, because of course it really is. I'm not there with them all the time now, and nor will I be in the future. If they have compassion in them, they will make the choices that reflect that compassion. And I love that. You know, I've seen many friends' kids over the years. They're so sweet because even when they were really young, I remember some friends of ours who had a daughter who's also now 7. She's been vegan since she was born. And even though she knew I was vegan, she would, every time I offered her some food, she would always say, is it vegan? She was 2, she was 3, she was 4, I was clearly vegan. She knew that we would often say, sweetie, you don't have to ask Auntie Call. She's vegan, but it was good for her to be in that habit. And she was in that habit every time she was offered food. She just said, is it vegan? And if it wasn't, she didn't take it. She didn't want it. And if it was, she would take it. So it's really a very simple lesson we can teach our children. Just, is it vegan? We do the same thing. It's just something they'll do when they grow up as well. The next question is, how do you address demeaning depictions or abusive depictions of animals in books and movies and television shows? And Tammy says, we always talk about it. I make a point not to let it go or ignore it. I encourage them to talk about how the animal must feel in a certain situation, like if it's a dog forced to pull a sled in the movie Snow Buddies, or a fish caught on a hook, like in a Curious George book we have. I make sure my kids know that the people making the show or writing the book want the animals to look happy, but that the animals aren't truly happy in real life when they're in those situations. Rather than avoiding seeing such images, which would be hard to do in any case, I think it's important for them to learn to pick things apart and to see the false images in the media. The next question I asked Tammy is, should you let your kid go to the zoo or farm or state fair, particularly if it's a class field trip? And Tammy said, as a family, we don't go to these places, and our children know why. So far, our school-age daughter has not been asked to go there with her class to the zoo. Nate and I have talked about it, though, and have thought that we might let Kaylee have the choice to go to the zoo if she wanted to experience it on a field trip. While I detest the zoo, I do wonder if it might be good for her to visit just once, just to see how horrible it is for the animals. Then she may not want to go back on her own. Then again, I think she would probably choose to not go in the first place because of the fact that we've talked about it so much and she knows it's just not good for the animals. First, I'm sure you can see by now how awesome Kaylee is. Like I said, she's completely internalized being vegan. And just as I wouldn't want to go to the zoo, Kaylee wouldn't want to go to the zoo either. And I know this is not an easy situation all the time. I've seen other vegan parents deal with this similarly, not unlike what Tammy was saying about using as an opportunity. Once the kids know what a zoo is for real, like really what a zoo is, then they see it for what it is. And so you can bring them and let them see for themselves and let them form an opinion based on everything you've told them about a zoo and based on what they see for themselves, seeing animals in cages. When the kids view the world through a fully compassionate lens, a lens that includes everyone, they see it for what it is. The problem is not the vegan parents who tell the truth to their children. The problem is all the adults sugarcoating abuse so that their kids aren't really seeing it for what it is, and then we become completely inured to it by the time we're adults. So telling your kids the truth about places like the zoo is key to them understanding what the problem is and to making an informed decision, right? That's the whole point. Next, what are some enjoyable ways to teach young kids to appreciate animals? And of course, Tammy's first suggestion is visit a farm sanctuary. Adopt an animal from a sanctuary for their birthday or for their holiday. Our kids each have an animal they sponsor at farm sanctuary for their birthdays. Parents may want to start small if they are going to commit to sponsoring an animal. Pigs and goats are expensive. As we've learned, for our third child, we're going to help a rabbit or a chicken. Instead, I just recently saw Kaylee's pig, Stacy, up at farm sanctuary. I was just up there for my birthday, actually, and Stacy is the pig that Kaylee sponsors. And for every birthday, at Kaylee's birthday, instead of asking for presents, she asks for donations to Farm Sanctuary for her pig, Stacy. It's pretty cute. It's pretty awesome. Tammy continues, rescuing an animal from a shelter, teaching your kids how to lovingly care for this animal is awesome if you're up to that commitment. Planning vacations in nature, like camping, where kids can see and appreciate animals in their natural habitats is great. Our kids have been so excited to see raccoons and foxes and rabbits and deer on our camping trips. And I want to interject, even just in your backyard, I get really excited about things like squirrels. I mean, I will stop and point out a squirrel to someone and they're like, yeah, it's a squirrel. I see squirrels all the time. But to me, it's still so amazing to see these wild animals running around who are obviously also very comfortable around humans. But birds, I mean, in your backyard, and we have possum who come here at night, and we have skunks who come around our house at night, and anything we can show that's just in our regular environment, insects, all of these animals around us are opportunities to show them, to instill respect in your children. The beach is also a wonderful place to see seals and dolphins and fish. Going on hikes where kids can see families of quail and snakes and other birds and various insects keeps them connected to the natural world. And one final note that Tammy wanted to make sure she expressed was this. Parents who choose to raise their kids vegan must be sure of their own personal commitment to veganism. They can't doubt whether they're doing the right thing or whether they're hurting or depriving their children. The parents must know why they're choosing to be vegan and be proud of being vegan. I know that my joy and pride in being vegan is totally clear to my children. I never try and hide it from others. But I show my kids how I know that we're making the right choice and that we're so much better and we're so much happier for it. If I were to waver in our dedication, in mine and my husband's, the kids are going to know. They wouldn't be as motivated or they wouldn't be as sure about being vegan themselves. If we had the attitude that our kids are missing out, our kids would know this too. I just think the key to creating a strong foundation and knowing that you're making the right choice to raise your kids vegan is key. Talk about it passionately and with the love and empathy and joy that you have for it, and your kids will follow suit. You're giving your children the best gift you could give them. You're not depriving them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And before I forget, I want to just recommend Tammy's blog. She's recently started a blog with 2 other vegan moms, and you can find it at growingvegans.blogspot.com. And you can also see photos of her ridiculously beautiful children there too. They're just gorgeous and they're so awesome. I love those kids. Tammy's also been on the message board. You might find some posts from her on our message board, which is compassionatecookscommunity.com. And I believe it's Vegan Tammy with an I, Tami, on there. So she's just awesome. Thank you so much, Tammy. And there's more. I wanted to make sure we had books for with a vegetarian message. And there's so many out there, but Tammy pared them down to her favorites, which was really helpful for me because I just did not want to name every single book out there. There are quite a few these days, which is fantastic. So these are Tammy's favorites. Pete and Pickles by Berkeley Breathed, I think is how you say his name. A beautiful story about a sweet elephant who escapes from the circus and a grumpy pig who reluctantly agrees to help her. In the end, they develop a strong and wonderful bond. Though it's not about farm animals, the story highlights the suffering and loneliness of circus animals, and it also teaches children about friendship. There's Benny the Brontosaurus Goes to a Party by Ray Ortega. Ray is a friend of mine, actually. Ray's the founder of Sunflower Baking Company cookies, fantastic vegan gluten-free cookies. And this is the story about an herbivore dinosaur who successfully navigates the birthday party of his T-Rex friend. There is A Turkey for Thanksgiving. This is a beautifully illustrated, sweet story about a group of wild animals who invite a turkey to be a guest at their Thanksgiving dinner instead of the main course. There's Hubert the Pudge, A Vegetarian Tale by Henrik Drescher, a silly but interesting story about an imaginary animal called a pudge, think pig, who escapes from a factory farm and revels in his freedom. After eating all the plants he wants, he grows so large as to be able to liberate the other pudges and convinces the factory farm owners to switch to the production of tofu hot dogs. There's Herb the Vegetarian Dragon by Jules Bass and Debbie Harder, a colorfully illustrated book about a kind-hearted vegetarian dragon that helps the meat-eating dragons and the people of the medieval village to get along. There's 'Twas the Night Before Thanksgiving, which is so adorable if you've never seen this before. It's based on the classic Christmas poem. It's a wonderful story and has beautiful artwork that tells the story of a group of school children who visit a turkey farm on the eve of Thanksgiving. After learning of the fate of the turkeys, they help them escape to the children's homes where both humans and turkeys have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. It's a really sweet story. A classic now really is Victor's Picnic and Victor the Vegetarian by Radha Vignola. Both of these books follow a little boy named Victor as he first stops eating meat because of his love for his family's recently born lamb, and then he attends an imaginary picnic with some woodland animals where he learns to follow a nutritious vegan diet. Tammy says that she prefers the storyline to the artwork, but young children seem to enjoy the book despite this. Benji Beansprout Doesn't Eat Meat by Sarah Rudy. In this book, a school-aged boy encounters teasing from several of his classmates because he's vegan and his food seems weird to them. Benji and his parents explore why they're vegan and bring one of Benji's favorite meals to school to share with the class. When the other students try his food, they see that he isn't so strange and neither is his food. This book is good for older kids who may encounter situations where they're perceived as or feel different because of their veganism. A new book by Ruby Roth, which is really making its way around the vegan community, is called This Is Why We Don't Eat Animals. It's beautiful. It's a book about vegans, vegetarians, and all living things. It's a lovely book to add to your collection. It's so beautifully illustrated. Ruby is the illustrator, and she's the writer. of the book. She's a mom, she's a teacher, and she's just created a really beautiful resource for vegetarian and vegetarian curious families. And then also a new book is called Our Farm by the Animals of Farm Sanctuary, and it's by Maya Gottfried. Maya is this wasn't on Tammy's list, but I just bought it for her because I don't think she has it yet. It's just brand new. Maya is a podcast listener, and she wrote, of the books that I've written, this is the most important and meaningful to me. She's a fellow longtime farm sanctuary supporter, and Maya beautifully captures the animals' personalities with short, lovely poems about each animal, which is really written by the animal, that appeals to young children at preschool, aged up to 3 years. There's gorgeous watercolor paintings of the animals, and they're just so exquisitely represented. I couldn't put the book down. I know many of the animals from the California shelter at Farm Sanctuary, so it was really special for me. And it was also really special because Maya told me that she wasn't planning on including burros, donkeys, in the book, but after hearing my podcast on burros, which is called The Burden of Burros, she was compelled to include them as well. So Bonnie, our burro, is in there, and she's just beautiful. There's also a new book. Let me just remember this from the top of my head. A friend of mine, Deborah Underwood, is a children's book author, and she's vegan, and she's a supporter of farm sanctuaries. Also, farm sanctuaries come up a lot in today's episode. And she just came out with a book called Granny Gomez and Jigsaw. Oh, is that correct? I want to make sure that's correct. Go to, it's in our store. It's actually in the Amazon store, but it's Granny Gomez and Jigsaw. Deborah wanted to get the message of compassion in there as much as possible. It's not a full-on vegan book, but it tells the story of the relationship between this old woman and this pig that she decides to keep as a pet because she didn't want him to be killed for meat. So I believe it's called Granny Gomez and Jigsaw, and that just came out as well. So there's lots of wonderful books to check out, and there's so much to say about this topic. There's so much to say about the food. I couldn't cover all of that here. I know transitioning non-vegan kids to become vegan can be challenging, but whatever difficulties you have in the beginning, they really do settle down. And when we persevere, we push through what seems like an endless struggle, change definitely occurs. You just have to trust it. One really easy way for transitioning anyone is to serve vegan counterparts of familiar foods, such as non-dairy milks, non-dairy yogurts, etc. This goes for adults and children as well. And there are a lot to choose from these days. In my opinion, you've heard me talk about them before. The best of all of these, the best yogurts, the best soy milk, the best tofu, the best tempeh, the best vegan mayonnaise is Wildwood. Wildwood Foods. You can find them at wildwoodfoods.com. They're the best. I've been raving about them for so many years. You'd think I own stock in their company. I don't own stock in their company, but that's only because they're not public. If they were public, I'd own stock in their company. They're simply the best when it comes to making delicious foods from soybeans. And every kid I know agrees with this. They've recently configured a lot of their goodies, and so now they have tofu made from sprouted soybeans, which increases the availability of nutrients. It also makes them easier to digest, and this goes for all of their tofus. They have firm, medium firm, extra firm, and my favorite, super firm. In my opinion, no tofu comes close to the super firm, the Wildwood super firm tofu in terms of taste and texture. And of course, all of their soybeans are U.S. grown, they're non-GMO, they're not genetically modified, and they're organic. I know there are a lot of yogurts out there these days, which is fantastic. My favorite yogurt is Wildwood. I've been on a huge yogurt kick lately. My breakfasts change according to season, and I start every day with a Wildwood yogurt. Kids love this stuff. There's strawberry, there's vanilla, there's blueberry, there's peach, which is my favorite. There's raspberry. There's unsweetened plain, which is really great. A lot of people look for this for baking and for other, because they want to eat unsweetened plain. And a lot of people ask me about probiotics. We've all kind of been sold on the idea of making sure that we get our good bacteria from yogurt. And of course, non-dairy yogurt also contains probiotics. Wildwood has this now with their new packaging and their new formulas. It's literally called probiotic yogurt. They have 7 live and active probiotic cultures. Of course, there's their garlic aioli, which is also known as crack in my house, good crack. And it's beyond delicious. So switching from an egg-based mayonnaise to something like Wildwood's garlic aioli is an easy thing you can do to transition your kids. They'll never know the difference, though they might know the difference because they might realize something's tastier. It's tastier and more compassionate. And then they have this new food offering I just want to mention. It's the Pasta Slim. So there's Pasta Slim spaghetti and Pasta Slim spinach fettuccine. It's so good. It's made from tofu, and this pasta is healthier than wheat-based pasta. It's lower calorie than wheat-based pasta for sure. It's gluten-free. One 3.5-ounce serving is 20 to 25 calories versus like 300 for regular pasta. So kids would love this too. You can just throw some pasta sauce on it. It's already cooked, so you just have to, either immerse it in hot water or just throw it in hot water. It's just fantastic. So there's a million reasons to check out Wildwood Foods, and I promise it will really help transition your family. And in all cases, when you're transitioning foods, you can do half and half. If your kids are still drinking cow's milk, you can do half cow's milk, half soy milk, half Wildwood soy milk. Same with yogurt. You can start slowly getting them used to the new taste. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it tastes inferior. It's just different. And so our palates have to get used to that, and our kids' palates have to get used to that. So slowly transitioning using non-dairy based foods is a great way to start getting your kids used to the non-dairy stuff. Wildwood's distribution is growing. I know it's not available everywhere on the planet yet, but check out wildwoodfoods.com and find out where you can find it near you. There's a store locator link. You can search by zip code. It looks like they're only in the U.S. right now, so drop them a line and ask when they may reach other places like Canada and elsewhere. But wildwoodfoods.com. I'm sure you have plenty of your own suggestions. I'm sorry if I didn't cover everything here. This is definitely a topic we'll return to again and again. If you have your own suggestions, I encourage you to share them on the message board, CompassionateCooksCommunity.com. Please share your thoughts and ideas with other parents. It's a big issue for people. They want to raise their kids compassionately, and they really struggle because we live in a world that values convenience over compassion. The problems we have in this world, in my opinion, are not because we have so much compassion in the world that we don't know what to do with it. The problems we have are because we're not living according to our own values of compassion and kindness. May we not unlearn the compassion we have as children, but rather choose to make it the guide for our daily thoughts and our daily behavior. And may we teach that lesson to our children. For the animals, both human and non-human, this is Colleen with Compassionate Cooks. Thanks for listening.